Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm Marilyn, and if you're new here, thanks for joining me on Making with Marilyn. If you're returning, thanks so much for coming back. Now on today's video, I'm going to sew a bowl cozy. These are super functional, really cute, and they're not a difficult project. I had never heard of one of these until a couple of years ago when my sister-in-law gave me one. This is the one that she made, and then I've made some myself since then. When you use coordinating fabrics like this, you can reverse it and get two different looks from it. But if you just want to use one type of fabric, that's okay too. So here's the one she made. I've made a couple out of these fabrics, and I've made a couple out of these fabrics. Now a bowl cozy holds your bowl, just like it sounds like. If you want to put this in the microwave, say to warm up leftovers or make some soup, then you need to make sure that your fabric, your batting, and your thread is all cotton. I do put mine in the microwave, so that's what I'll use today. Now we're going to talk more about these as we go through the video, but I'll show you quickly what I'm using. I have two coordinating fabrics. I have this beautiful red fabric, and then this is a black and gray fabric. I think those will look really good together. These are 10 inches by 10 inches, but you can adjust your size to fit what you need. I also have two pieces of batting. This is all cotton batting, also 10 inches by 10 inches. I'm going to use some clips. You could use clips or pins. I used my rotary cutter already to cut down my material and my batting to 10 inches by 10 inches. I'm going to use my scissors. I might use this cutting mat. I will use a ruler, a friction pin. This will mark my fabric. If you don't like friction pins and you'd rather use chalk, that's fine as well. Then I have some all cotton thread, and my bobbin is also all cotton. Lastly, I'm going to use a little iron as we go, and so I also have this little mat that I can use when I do my ironing. So if this is something you're interested in, stick around and let's get started. The first step in this project will be to connect the batting to the red fabric and the batting to the black fabric. But I want to spend just a minute talking to you about the squares. You do want to put in the time and effort to try to get these as square as possible and to try to get them to the same size. If they're not perfect, that's okay, but do put in that time and effort to try to get them as close as possible. Now some people actually use basting spray to connect their fabric to their batting. They'll also do the stitching we're going to do, but some people actually start with basting spray. I've never used that step and mine have been fine, so I'm not going to do it today either. I'm going to make a line from this corner to this corner and this corner to this corner. I'm going to use one of these friction pins. This has like disappearing ink that when you add heat to it, it disappears. The one time when I had an issue was when I tried to use this on black fabric, and when I went to heat it off, it showed up even more. So I won't be using this on my black fabric. Instead, on my black fabric, I'll use this chalk pencil. So I'm connecting this corner to this corner with my ruler, and I'll take my friction pin and I'll just mark up to this corner and that back left corner. I'll do the same thing to connect the other two corners. So I'll use the chalk pencil this time. If you feel like you can go straight from one corner to the opposite corner, you don't have to mark it. Now that I've marked both pieces, I want to get my fabric lined up onto my batting. So I'm going to put the corners together, and today I'm using my cute little pink clips. I really love using clips. I started using them maybe a couple years ago, and I don't think I've used pins since then. Of course, you're going to use whatever's comfortable to you. So I'm just going to go all the way around this. I'm going to do the exact same thing with the black one. Once I've done that, we're going to start sewing. Let's go ahead and pull the sewing machine up and let's start stitching. Now I'm going to have to turn this toward me so that I sew straight. Hopefully that's a decent camera angle. I'm going to take my fabric, it has the batting on the back, and I'm going to put this corner under the needle. I like to go ahead and lower my presser foot, put my needle in, and I like to do a few stitches manually. So I'm just cranking the wheel on the side, making sure I'm getting a good start. Also making sure that the fabric is moving smoothly. That batting is just a little bit rough, and so I don't want it to get caught up on those feed dogs and cause it to bunch all up. So that's why I do that. And now we're ready to use the power of the machine. Now I'm going to guide this. I'm not going to push it, but I'm going to guide it with both hands. Now we're not doing any back stitching because eventually we're going to stitch around the outside, so that's going to catch those in there really nicely. Also, I don't know if you can see it, but on my presser foot, and it's probably the same with all presser feet, but on my presser foot there's a little line in the middle. I'm trying to keep that line right where the ink is so that I stitch straight on the ink. All right, let's go ahead and move that on out of the way. Now I'll lift this up and pull that back a little bit, and we'll do the same thing we did last time. We're going to lower the presser foot, lower the needle, do a few manual stitches, and then as we sew, we're going to try to keep that line lined up with my chalk. All right, now let's go ahead and get the excess ink off of this red one. I'll just wash that chalk paint off a little bit later. While I'm waiting for my iron to heat up, let me go ahead and trim off these excess pieces of thread. I like to kind of clean up as I go. So here's the front and here's the back. Both sides look very good. Now I want to show you this ink. I want you to see that it really does disappear. You can see I got off of the ink line right there. We're going to add some heat to this, and that's going to go away. Now red fabric, when you add heat to it, it gets darker, so don't let that freak you out. It'll go back to the right color, but you can see that ink's gone. I'll go ahead and get rid of the rest of it. The next step is to start adding some darts to this, and I'll show you why as soon as I get all these clips off. So we're going to start adding some darts, and they're going to look kind of like that. That starts giving it the bowl shape. We're going to add a dart on these two sides and these two sides. You go ahead and you fold your fabric, get these top edges together, and then I'm just going to kind of finger press that. Notice my X is pretty much right in the middle. That is exactly what you want, but if you get off a little bit, I don't think anyone's going to notice. Now what I do notice is, look how that fabric's bunched up in there, and that would be a big problem later on. So take the time to get your finger way in there and straighten that out, because we're going to be sewing along here in just a minute. So it's going to have to be straightened out. I might even take something longer and put it in the end And just make sure that that's really straightened out. To make those darts, we are going to mark an inch on the raw edge side. So we're going to go up an inch, mark it, and then on the folded side, we're going to go over 2 inches and mark that. Then we're going to connect those holding a ruler and using a pin. These are going to be on the inside, so if this is hard to mark with my friction pin, I'll get something else. But I'm going to go ahead and try it for now. So I have it flattened out, and I'm just marking an inch up. Now, I'm going to mark 2 inches in from the raw edge. And you have to make sure you don't get these backwards because it is not going to look right if you do. So just remember, 1 inch on the raw edge, 2 inches on the folded edge. Now all I'm going to do is connect those 2 dots. And I'll do that by marking on the fabric. Now here's what I was talking about. This batting is kind of hard to mark on. Kind of hard. Let me try a permanent marker instead. So this is just a Sharpie. And as long as you can see where to sew, it doesn't matter if it gets kind of ruffled up or messed up, it'll be fine. I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side. On the raw edge, we're going to mark 1 inch. And then on this folded edge, we're going to mark 2 inches. And then just like last time, we are going to connect the 2 dots on the outside of the fabric, or toward the edges of the fabric. Okay, let's go ahead and sew that down. Then we're going to do the same thing on the other 2 sides. I like to start out here at the raw edge because, like I talked about earlier, eventually this is going to get stitched over. This is not going to get stitched over. So I like to start out here, sew my way this way, and then I do a little back stitch. You're not going to get a lot of pressure or wear and tear or stress here, so I don't think you'd have to, but I do anyway. And like before, because this is rough fabric, I'm going to do a few of these stitches by turning the handle on the side. Okay, pretty confident that that's good. All right, now I'm going to do a little bit of a back stitch, and then I'll let the back stitch go and it'll come forward again, and I think that's good. Let's make sure that's still straightened out, and we're going to do this the same way. These threads are going to be on the inside, so it wouldn't even matter if you don't really cut them down very short. But I tend to just try to keep it pretty clean. Now we will go ahead and remove those clips, and you can see the bowl starting to take shape. But now what we're going to do is put the 2 darts together, and then we'll finger press the folded edge and add clips to the sides to hold them together securely. Now we're going to mark these the same way. 1 inch up, 2 inches over, 1 inch up on the raw side, 2 inches over. After we mark the darts going 1 inch up on the raw edge and 2 inches over on the folded edge, we'll sew them just like we did the last time. But remember, make sure the fabric inside is smooth and not bunched up. Now our bowl should really be taking shape. And it is. Now we're going to trim somewhat close to our thread. If you want, you could use pinking shears for this. You just want to get rid of some of that bulk. So I'm trimming fairly close, but not so close that I might accidentally snip my stitches. It doesn't need to be that close. Now when I'm done with this, I'm going to do the exact same thing on the black piece. So I'm going to make my darts, and then I'm going to trim away the excess fabric. The next step in this process is to go ahead and turn this one so that the pretty side is fluffed out, and then put it down inside this one. You need it pretty side to pretty side, and it really doesn't matter which one is fluffed out and turned the other way. You just have to have these pretty side to pretty side. I want to start by lining up the corners and pinning those or clipping those. And I feel like one of them might be slightly smaller than the other, so I might have gotten off on my darts just a little bit. You know, if you're not doing the exact same measurement on both of them, then of course one's going to turn out just a little bit smaller around the perimeter. But it is not going to be that big of a deal. All right, I have the 4 corners clipped. So now I'm just going to kind of tug on it a little bit, and I'm going to put the 2 darts together if they're fairly lined up. I'm not going to force one dart over too much. And I kind of overdo it on the number of clips that I use to start with. All right, so let's pull the fabric so it's flush. And then we're going to do our best and hope that these line up pretty well. And they do. Everything's turning out fine. Now they didn't turn out fine as far as lined up perfectly on my first couple of bowl cozies, and they still look great. So don't sweat the small stuff, especially if you're just starting out with this. Do the best job that you can, but once you flip these right side out, if they're off a little bit, you are not going to notice it. If they're off a lot, you'll probably notice it, but I don't think you'll do that. Now we are going to have to leave an opening. I don't want the opening to be in the corner, so I'm going to make sure that I sew around a corner, and I don't want my opening to be at the dart. I want my opening to be about 3 inches, at least 2.5 inches, somewhere between 2.5 and 3 inches. So let me figure out where that would be. Put a mark here. And then let's see, what can we fit in here? We can easily fit 2.5 inches and more like 2 3/4 inches if I go about right here. I have left a smaller opening than that, and you can still turn these right side out, but it does get to be a little bit difficult. Now eventually, to close in that, after we pull it right side out, we're going to top stitch around the whole thing, and you're not even going to notice it. So I'm going to start right here, go all the way around, and stop about right here. I am going to do some back stitching because as we're pulling this to get the inside out, you're going to put quite a bit of pressure on that. So we are starting right here. And right away I'm going to have to move that clip at least. And I'm going to get this lined up so that it is close to 1/2 inch. And then I'll go ahead and drop my needle down inside. Actually, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. There we go. That's about 3/8 inch. Before I start stitching, let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stitch straight to the dart. I'm going to leave my needle down inside the fabric. I'll lift my presser foot and adjust the fabric. Then I'll go straight to the corner. When I get to where I want to in the corner, I'll leave the needle down in the thread, lift the presser foot, and turn it. So at each corner and at each dart, I'm going to leave the needle in, lift the presser foot, and make some adjustments. Now I want my needle about even with that so that when I end up turning this right side out and I have to sew across there, that those are fairly even. All right, we're going to go ahead, lift this presser foot, and then we're just going to sew in. Here's my mark. So we're going to sew in about a half more inch, maybe a little less than that. So here's what it looks like. Let's get that excess thread cut away. Now it's time to turn this right side out. In the video, I forgot a step. I forgot to clip my corner, so I recreated this to show you what you should do at this point. When you flip this right side out, to get a really crisp corner, you just cut this off. Don't cut too close to the thread because you don't want to accidentally clip it, but you cut just like that. Then when you flip your material, it's easier to get a nice crisp corner. So I'm going to go ahead and work my fingers, or work this so that my fingers, see my fingers in here? I want to grab this side and I want to start pulling that through. And at some point there's a sweet spot where it gets really, really easy. But if you do it like this, it's really not that difficult at any time. Now I heard a thread pop. That's okay. We're going to be stitching over that again anyway. All right, let's just feed that on through there. And then we're going to take just a couple of minutes to clean this thing up, just to make sure the corners are pressed out and everything like that. I'm going to start by just using my fingers to press those corners out. We'll see how well that looks. I'm probably going to grab my handy dandy chopstick and put that in there though. I wish I would have sewn a little bit past that corner, a little bit more past that corner. It'll end up being fine, but I feel like maybe it looks better if you go a little bit further past the corner. But it'll look okay. Let's go ahead and use the chopstick. I'm going to put it inside and then I'm going to press against this corner to try to get it turned out. If you have a bone file or other corner turners, I don't know if that's what they're called, you could use that as well. Okay, that's pretty good. Now because there's that batting in there, you don't have to be super gentle with this, but keep in mind that you could still rip it if you press too hard. Now I want to go ahead and do some ironing. Now I'm most concerned with how it looks from the red side. So I'm going to try to kind of roll this so that the red is at the top. I don't see myself reversing this one. So that's why I'm going to do it like this. Then I like to take a little bit of time and iron my edges. I think this helps give your bowl a more crisp look and makes it a little easier to do the next step, which is to top stitch around the cozy. So let's go ahead and sew this together and then we're done. Now I am going to start where the opening is. To me, that's the most crucial part to get right. So I'm going to start right here. I'm actually going to come around the corner and then I'll keep going. Now this is starting to get a little bit thick, but this batting that I use that is all cotton is thinner than some I've used before. I highly prefer this batting to the other one. I'm going to use the edge of my presser foot to keep an even distance from the edge. I'm not going to start with a back stitch because when I get back around here, I'm going to stitch over it and do a back stitch then. So for now, I'm not going to do one. There is our bowl cozy. It is very pretty. I love this fabric. Love, love, love it. Now, I didn't do a great job of keeping the same distance for my top stitch, but I'm still happy with it. I think it still looks really good. And here's the bowl. I like how the corners extend up above the bowl. I made one where I rounded the corners, and I didn't think it was nearly as functional. Now, it kind of looked like a flower. That was pretty, but I do put these in the microwave, and I pick my bowl up with these corners. So I'll probably be sticking with the square corners. Again, the others were super cute, but I will stick with these. So hopefully you found this video helpful. Hopefully it was entertaining. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, leave them in the comment section below. And if you make these, let me know. Tag me. Put a picture of them in my Facebook group. I'd love to see what you do. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you in the next video.